Crystal and Aida and Seth for doing that. That's fantastic. It's great to hear other people doing that. Also, thank you, Hendershots, in general, all the employees, and do tip the bartenders. It's super important to our livelihood. And thank you, Chris from Good Shop, for the marketing materials prior. Is that bud? So I'm going to start off at the beginning, which is a good place to start. This is the opening scene for the book.
Is that Kiss?
And
Is that Kiss?
pardon me, I write these things. I don't
Wipe
often
it off.
read them out loud, so bear with me. 1 minute, 50 seconds. Hurry up, guys. Please hurry up. It was a dry, bright day in Los Angeles, and the intersection of Sunset and Vine was dense with movement. The threat of imminent extinction, brought on by the fear of a computational catastrophe at the turn of the century, had slightly dampened America's feeling of invincibility. The movement of the moment had the inhabitants of Los Angeles stressing down to look like the residents of Seattle, but no matter how you pitched it to the marketing team, Los Angeles was no place for flannel shirts and knit caps. Watching Los Angelinos trudge through their sun-beaten streets, wearing enough wool to ward off of the Pacific Northwest squall, never ceased to amuse me. Sad and indicative, really. A patrol car turned right onto Vineland from Leland Way and moved slowly through the intersection. The officers were primarily concerned with the length of skirts on that warm afternoon and were unimpressed by a man in a pinstripe suit standing outside of a bank and eyeing them up. They were driving far too casually to be responding to a bank alarm, so when they veered left at Hollywood Boulevard, I returned to watching the street. 5 seconds, they should have wrapped this up by now. I wonder if... gunshot. Oh Christ, this is it. I stepped inside the bank to witness the boys mowing down everyone in sight. Rich crimson arcs painted the walls and teller windows. Bodies lay in broken heaps across the long marble foyer. Gun smoke burned the air. I stepped back outside and cocked my 9mm. I'm the point man. I see all things at all times. This was my part in this insidious plan. Today everything had gone horribly wrong. The boys made a pact before we began pulling gigs together that if one civilian got shot, every civilian died. Once someone got shot, it was no longer just a bank robbery, it became murder one. There could be no witnesses. The pact had always struck me as a tough guy posture. Now I knew better. We had bigger problems now. Stretch was approaching in the car, right on time. Let's go, 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 go. Into the car, the force of acceleration made it impossible to fasten my safety restraint right away. What happened? What caused all the chaos? I looked around the car. Some John Wayne motherfucker went for the alarm, so I dealt with him. What was I supposed to do? If it's between us going to prison and some worthless rent-a-cop getting waxed, I say bon voyage, Tubby. Mike was the type whose finger was poised on the trigger because he was dying for a reason to squeeze. We're not in the clear yet. You ladies sit back and try to look like the rest of the zombies in this city, got it? Jake was our efficient and somewhat unstable head honcho. The phrase nerves of steel had never had a clear-cut definition until Jake walked the earth. We drove down Sunset Boulevard to UCLA and ditched the getaway car in parking structure 7. We continued from there in 4 different vehicles, north, south, east, and west. I traveled south on the 405 freeway in my black and beaten 51 Mercury. I must have smoked an entire pack of Pall Malls on the way to Costa Mesa. The world was spinning, and a sudden realization struck me. I was responsible for the deaths of 20 innocent people. I was barely old enough to hold a master's degree, and I had already stolen millions. I wondered if the money I would receive in 3 weeks would compensate for that guilt. The dead slap of limp bodies against the bank floor and the ping of ricocheting bullets drove all other sounds from my mind. I loosened my necktie in hopes that this oppression would subside. It didn't. My pinstripe suit was a felonious precursor. The 405 started backing up around Long Beach, so I slipped down to PCH. It was my 3rd gig with the boys, and I wondered when it would be enough. We were already monetarily set for life, but with our profession came an addiction to the rush. Money is the most important thing in the world. People died every day protecting it, and we got our kicks punching holes in their fortified walls. but my blood was beginning to thin after the fiasco that I had just witnessed. Was I losing my edge? Possibly. Probably. Maybe I should pack it up and head out to Vegas where I belong. What if we were all thinking the same damn thing, but no one else had the guts to say a word? Exactly 3 weeks later, I strutted into the night at the brazenly early hour of 10 p.m. with a fresh shave, fresh haircut, and a new suit. When I walked in, the boys were seated at our booth in the back. Our trademark cloud of cigarette and cigar smoke obscured my vision of Mike, Jake, and Stretch. The cramped, sodden walls and carpeting yawned apathy, and none of the lost souls hugging the rail turned from their drinks. I walked up to the bar, gave Tony the barkeep a firm handshake, and ordered a beer. "Where you been, Dino?" Tony's haphazard beach bum ponytail whipped as he turned. "You know, here and there." "It's good to see you, Tony. So what do you charge for a beer these days?" "It's on the house, Dino. It's good to have the boys back in the old dive." "You hear about those hoods that robbed that piggy bank in L.A.? Tony gestured to the television hanging over the end of the bar. News of the robbery was still being replayed on the midday programs when the news cycle was slow. "Got away with a few million scot-free. Lucky fucks." "On the house, you say? Make that straight gin. Wait, make that a double." "You're a real bastard, Dean," Tony smiled. "That's what I hear, Tony. That's what I hear." Okay. And then the next one I'm going to read is actually a continuation of the chapter that Crystal and Aida read from. And as a part that Seth read kind of illustrates, this guy falls in love a lot, quite a bit, and often for all the wrong reasons. But this is one of the potential loves of his life that don't actually materialize. On the subject of worthwhile expenditures of time, I had been waiting for an hour overlooking the cliffs of Point Furman, and it looked like Helen wasn't going to show. Once again, I sat waiting, holding vigil for someone who let me down. I stretched out on the barrier wall and watched the stars struggle to penetrate the city light with their million-year-old beauty. I remembered how clearly you could see the stars on the road to Vegas. I thought about my absent lady friend, a young lady I had discovered galaxies with, enveloped in the warmth of a blazing fire. Helen was so alive, so desirable. When she was in my arms, I felt I could convince her to leave her man and run away with me. We could gaze into the onyx sky and discuss the universe as if it were in the room with us. But I said nothing of what I felt, and he was still holding her. I should have told her not to beat herself in the head over a decision that is best made by her heart. But I am not that brave, and besides, I couldn't, in good conscience, bring such a lovely young woman into my world. That night clinched it. I had nothing left. The next morning I put on my black suit, white shirt, black suspenders, my black wingtips, and a fire engine red tie from the vault of a 1940s tailor. I was ready for Vegas. I stepped out the front door with one suitcase and a black hat. I took one final look around my apartment and left. And then, thank you. And then one last part. As mentioned in one of the earlier readings, the protagonist is briefly married. And this is a little backstory on why shit didn't work out between them. Sorry, buddy.
Hey, Mom. Hey, what?
Whatever she was running from when I found her was gaining on her. Our lazy days of post-nuptial celebration were interrupted abruptly. I have to run an errand. Audine stood over me, fully clothed, with her bag clutched in both hands. "I'll be back in an hour." Okay. "You have to go right now?" "Yes." Audine kissed me slowly on the forehead. "I'll be back soon." It was the first of many errands. When I could no longer accept her excuses, I followed her. I tailored her to the north side, where she entered a small, decayed neighborhood speckled with gray, near-demolished homes. Prostitutes and johns clogged the sidewalks, and as we sank deeper into the melee, I began to rethink my decision to follow her and mistrust my desire to know. Audine stopped in front of a dreary two-story apartment building and disappeared into the ground floor. I parked and walked across the street. I sat casually on the apartment building's front step and watched Audie knock on the door for apartment A. A stout, olive-skinned man opened the door and beckoned for her to step inside. "Kid," I called out to an adolescent on a bike. "What?" He was not pleased about being flagged down. "You live around here?" "Yeah, why?" The kid had better things to do. "I nicked someone's car while I was parking. I want to give them my insurance information. I think he lives in apartment A. Short guy, jet black hair. Dimitri?" "Perfect." The kid gave him up. "But Dimitri's car isn't parked out here." "Thanks, kid." I waved as I returned to my car. She returned 20 minutes later, emerged hairy, wide-eyed, and anxious. She looked up and down the sidewalk several times, both ways, as if she were about to cross a highway. She seemed stuck. She could not decide to take the first step. Somehow, it was too much for her to bear. She looked about once more in desperation before plopping down on a step and sobbing quietly. When tears ceased streaking her cheeks, she wiped her face, stood, and drove away. Dimitri closed the door and locked it. I'd nearly given up on the bastard leaving his cave. His side window was easy enough to pry open, and in North Vegas, prying open a window is, well, of less concern than the crimes happening block by block in every direction. Dimitri's hovel was sodden with the debris of lethargy, half-consumed fast food, clothing representing various levels of cleanliness, and the reason for audience visit, a tiny crystallized mound of amphetamine. I destroyed the room. I expected to feel rage, but I was consumed by one thought: end this now.